a former soldier had to endure racial discrimination on what seemed like a peaceful day, despite having devoted his life to the country. This story is not merely a case of abuse of power. It is a battle against deep-rooted prejudices in society, where justice is often overlooked and the voices of marginalized individuals are frequently silenced. His journey reflects the struggle not only for justice for himself, but also for equality for all others. This underscores that every individual has the right to be treated fairly and to have the opportunity to speak up. So what does true justice mean? And what responsibilities do we each have in this important fight? Before embarking on this inspiring and challenging journey, we invite you to share your thoughts. When and where are you listening to this story? Please leave a comment below. We look forward to hearing from you. Tom sat in his car, his eyes briefly glancing at the windshield, where the familiar scenery of the neighborhood slowly emerged. The narrow road stretched out before him, with rows of shade-giving trees quietly swaying in the cool breeze. He no longer felt as if he were suspended in the high skies. The strong winds that once weaved through the wings of his plane were now just memories. Tom's life as a pilot, with its days of soaring through the air, now belonged to the past. At 45, Tom had once thought he would continue serving in the Air Force for many more years, but the harsh reality struck him suddenly. The doctor told him that he had an arrhythmia, a condition that prevented his heart from beating steadily as it once did. Tom faced the truth that he could no longer fly. This was not only a shock to him, but also a tremendous loss in his life. Since he was a boy, Tom had dreamed of being a pilot, and now that dream had closed unexpectedly. Tom sighed, placing his hand on the steering wheel, a heavy sense of fatigue weighing on his heart. But although his body had grown somewhat weaker, his mind remained sharp. He was still a disciplined man with patience. This did not change just because he was no longer flying in the skies. However, the disappointment was hard to conceal as he faced this new reality, a reality he had never envisioned before. Tom's car slowly entered the neighborhood where he had lived with his wife and daughter for many years. It was a peaceful neighborhood, with small houses closely lined together, the scene resembling any other day. Calm and quiet. This street was free from the noise of airplane engines, devoid of the hustle and bustle or the sounds of the outside world. Only the chirping of birds and the rustling leaves filled the air, as if life here passed slowly and peacefully. Tom looked at the houses with their warm yellow lights, where neighbors were tidying their gardens or chatting over the fence. Here, life unfolded gently and pleasantly. Although Tom had to leave behind the piloting job he loved, a part of his heart felt relieved to be returning to his wife and daughter. He knew that here, in his beloved home, he would no longer have to worry about his health or work pressures. Family was the solid foundation, the place where he could find peace within himself. Stopping the car in front of his house, Tom sat quietly for a few seconds, his eyes fixed on the window, where warm light spilled out from the living room. He could imagine his wife Sarah preparing dinner in the kitchen, while his little daughter, Lily, was sitting at the dining table doing her homework. These images made Tom's heart feel at ease. Although a lingering sadness remained within him, the presence of his family made him realize that perhaps there were still many things in life worth cherishing. He stepped out of the car, his feet touching the ground, as if for the first time he truly felt the stability beneath him after many years of flying in the sky. The chilly evening air brushed against his skin, prompting him to take a deep breath. "This feels nice," Tom thought to himself, feeling the gentle breeze caress his face, no longer the strong winds above, but the soft peacefulness of the earth. Tom slowly walked into the house, a mix of nervousness and anticipation in his heart. He opened the door, and the soft laughter of Lily floated out from the kitchen. Sarah looked up when she heard his footsteps, her eyes lighting up when she saw Tom. Without needing to say anything more, Sarah's gaze spoke volumes. She smiled, a smile that was both caring and reassuring, as if she understood everything he was going through. "You're home," Sarah said, her voice gentle yet full of empathy. Tom smiled in response, no further words needed. Military life had taught him how to face difficulties without complaint. But here, in the embrace of his family, he felt he could allow himself to be a little vulnerable. He sat down at the dining table, looking into the face of his daughter, her joy and innocence a balm for his wounded heart. His new life, no longer flying, but filled with love and peace. And that, for Tom, was enough to begin a new chapter in his life. Dinner was served with familiar dishes, fragrant roasted chicken, smooth mashed potatoes, and fresh green vegetables. The aroma of the food mingled with the laughter and stories of the family, creating a warm and close-knit atmosphere. "Dad, today I learned something really interesting about history," Lily exclaimed, her eyes bright with excitement, unable to contain the enthusiasm in her voice. "Oh, really? What did you learn?" Tom asked, paying attention to every word from his daughter. "I learned about the Great Wars and how strategists use their intelligence to win," Lily said, her eyes shining. "Do you think that planning strategies is also important in life?" "Very important, my daughter," Tom replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. "But sometimes, in life, we also need to be flexible. Not every plan works out, you know." John, his son, sat across from him, his face glowing as he mentioned recent memories from college. "Dad, I was involved in a big project about climate change. We had to make a presentation video, and we ran a social media campaign," John excitedly shared. "It was an amazing experience." "That's fantastic, John. What did you do to grab attention?" Tom asked, interested in what his son was up to. "We created a hashtag and called on everyone to share ideas to reduce plastic waste. As a result, a lot of students got involved, and our video was widely shared," John replied proudly. "Wow, that's impressive. What role did you play in that video?" Tom asked, feeling proud of his son's enthusiasm. "I played the main role, talking about easy ways people can implement in their daily lives," John said with a bright smile. "I pointed out that sometimes, even small actions can make a big difference." Tom felt his heart swell as he looked at the radiant smiles on his children's faces. "Thank you for sharing those interesting stories. I feel like I've come home fully," Tom said, his emotions welling up. "Life isn't just about flights in the sky. It's also about precious moments with family like this." Lily and John exchanged smiles, their connection stronger than ever, and in that moment, Tom felt a sense of peace within, a peace he had longed for over the years. "Dad, can you go flying next time?" Lily innocently asked, her bright eyes shining. Tom smiled. "Maybe not, but I will always be here by your side, and that's what matters most." Everyone burst into laughter, and in Tom's heart, he knew that his journey, despite its many challenges, was still being written with the love and support of his family. When Tom returned home after many years of service in the Air Force, he didn't just come back with his old self. He carried within him a soul filled with turmoil. Military life had left deep marks on him, unforgettable memories of discipline, orders, and camaraderie. There, everything had to adhere to strict rules. Every hour, every minute was meticulously scheduled, from training sessions to flying missions. Precision was vital, and every decision could lead to serious consequences. Tom had learned to set aside personal feelings to complete tasks because, in the military, there was no room for weakness. But upon entering his home, Tom felt a completely different atmosphere. His family had no orders or rigid directives. Every meal was an occasion for everyone to gather, where laughter and daily stories replaced discussions of military strategy. Here, Tom saw Lily's innocent gaze and listened to John's enthusiastic tales about student life. These simple things filled his heart with love. However, the transition from military life to family life was not easy. That night, when everyone had fallen asleep, Tom lay restless in bed. He couldn't catch a wink. His mind kept spinning with images and sounds from his years in the military. The sharp commands, the roar of airplane engines, and the tense moments during missions replayed like a movie in his head. He was accustomed to seriousness and discipline, but now, within those familiar four walls, he felt lost. In the military, he had learned to cope with immense pressure, but now the tranquility of home made him feel uneasy. Tom was used to issuing commands and exerting control, but at home, he needed to learn how to share and listen. The tension between these two worlds sometimes made him feel uncomfortable. Whenever he tried to open up to Sarah, he found old habits surfacing, as if it were a natural reflex. Amidst the chaotic thoughts in his mind, he remembered the happy moments with his family. He recalled Sarah's smile as she prepared dinner, the laughter of Lily and John as they conversed together. The love and understanding from his family was what he had yearned for during the years of separation. Despite feeling tired and anxious, he knew that his family was where he truly belonged. Tom realized that the difference between military life and family life lay not just in rules or routines, but in the way love and connection genuinely existed. Military life had taught him perseverance and strength, while family brought him peace and precious moments to cherish. He understood that even with sleepless nights and lingering thoughts, he could find solace in the love from his family. The next morning, Tom woke up as soft sunlight streamed through the window. Last night had felt long. It was not easy for him to get some rest, but Tom knew he needed to regain his spirit and motivation. He decided to go for a run to clear his mind when suddenly, his phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. Looking at the screen, he saw John's name flashing. "Dad!" John's voice came through, a bit panicked. "I forgot to bring my stuff to school." Tom stopped at the roadside, feeling his heartbeat quicken. "What do you need?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I have a presentation and need to bring the materials," John said, his tone urgent. "I understand. Don't worry, I'll bring it to school for you," Tom reassured him, filled with determination. "What exactly do you need?" John's urgency was clear in every word he spoke. "I'll be there soon," Tom promised, hanging up and returning to his run. But instead of continuing, he decided to quickly head back home to grab the necessary items. Tom drove with a smirk, a smile he couldn't contain. "So forgetful, my son. You must have been preoccupied with other things." He wondered what would happen if this situation occurred in the military. A soldier absent-mindedly forgetting to bring equipment during training. He could imagine the whole team being punished with push-ups in the sun, just because one person forgot to check their gear. Suddenly, the siren and flashing lights of a police car interrupted his thoughts. Nevertheless, Tom remained calm, gradually slowing down and looking in the rearview mirror, watching the police car approach from behind. Officer Yankos, who was driving the police car, announced over the loudspeaker, "Pull over the blue vehicle." Tom quietly complied, steering the car to the roadside, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as his eyes remained fixed on the rearview mirror. He pressed the emergency light button and waited behind the window, displaying a cooperative demeanor while maintaining his composure. "Driver's license," Jankos said sharply, issuing a command. Tom pulled out his driver's license and handed it to Jankos. "Here you go, officer." Officer Jankos took the license and scrutinized not only the document, but also Tom's appearance. His gaze quickly shifted from the paperwork to Tom's face, as if he were trying to read something from Tom's exterior. Jankos glanced over the documents casually before his expression darkened. "Get out of the car," he ordered, his hand hovering near his sidearm. Despite being prepared, Tom still felt bewildered. He gently closed the car door and stood facing Jankos. "Is there a problem, officer? I see many people like you driving around here, and they often don't have their paperwork in order. Are you sure everything here is legal?" Jankos' tone concealed no hint of suspicion. "All the paperwork is here, and I always follow the rules," Tom replied gently but firmly, trying not to let negative emotions take control. Jankos continued to investigate with a skeptical attitude, his scrutinizing gaze examining not only the paperwork, but also Tom's car. "This car seems too new for someone like you. How did you buy it? Are you sure there's nothing unusual?" Jankos' words once again revealed clear bias and prejudice, making the atmosphere even more tense. Tom felt a slight annoyance rising within him, but he maintained his calm. He looked directly into Jankos' eyes, his tone still gentle yet resolute. "This car was purchased with my savings from many years of hard work." However, Jankos ignored Tom's words. He immediately grabbed Tom's arm roughly and forcefully pushed him against the car hood. The surprise of this action left Tom stunned, his skin feeling the heat from the engine. His own breath echoed in his ears, and a mix of anger and disbelief began to swell in his chest. "Stay still! You're under arrest for resisting." Tom's mind was in turmoil. Resisting? He hadn't even had a chance to react. The absurdity of the situation gradually sank into his consciousness, but before he could voice his objection, Jankos twisted his arms behind his back and cuffed him roughly with unnecessary force. "I think you've gone too far." The words he hadn't finished saying were cut off by Jankos' actions. With no response and no explanation, Jankos simply pressed his knee into Tom's hip, forcing him down to the ground. amplifying the pain and discomfort. This incident unfolded in front of bystanders, and a few had begun to stop and watch. One person among them started recording on their phone, undeterred by Jankos's cold demeanor. Tom felt a deep sense of humiliation as he was publicly restrained, while this misunderstanding and unnecessary violence continued to unfold. Tom tried to remain calm, understanding that any sudden movement could escalate the situation further. The discipline from his years of military training surged within him, reminding him to stay still and not resist. But deep down, he realized that to Jankos, he was just another black man regarded as suspicious without reason, presumed guilty until proven innocent. The anger within Tom continued to simmer. He recalled the years he had served his country, the respect he had earned, and the sacrifices he had made. Tom had dedicated his life to serving. Now, as Jankos harshly cuffed him, the act not only inflicted physical pain, but also represented a profound insult to his dignity. Every action of Jankos, from the contemptuous glances to the discriminatory words, aimed to humiliate and belittle Tom, a man who had once served and protected the nation with loyalty. "What did I do wrong?" Tom's voice trembled. "I told you to get out of the car. You were too slow, and that's resisting," Jankos ground out through clenched teeth. Jankos made a rough gesture, pulling Tom to his feet and spinning him around forcefully. As they faced each other, their eyes met in a moment charged with tension. Jankos's gaze revealed disdain, not for the actions Tom had taken, but for Tom himself. To Jankos, Tom was merely an object to exert power over. This not only demonstrated an abuse of authority, but also reflected a profound misunderstanding of the fundamental principles of justice and human rights. While Tom felt powerless against Officer Jankos's overreach, he suddenly noticed that several bystanders were gathering on the sidewalk, some standing still with wide eyes in shock, unsure how to react, while others busied themselves with their phones, capturing every moment of the unfolding incident. For Tom, this could provide some relief in thinking that the community might see and condemn Jankos's actions, but it also deepened his sense of humiliation as he realized he was being degraded in public. Military training had taught Tom that the image he projected and how he presented himself to the world could profoundly influence others' perceptions and even alter circumstances. Now, as he was handcuffed and faced the gazes of ordinary citizens on the street who knew nothing of his history of serving the country, Tom felt he was not merely a victim of an isolated incident, but a symbol of a much larger issue. He resolved that, despite this painful and humiliating experience, it needed to be a catalyst for change, not only for himself, but for the community as well. In the crowd gathered around the scene, a man suddenly shouted, his voice full of outrage, "Hey, he's a hero! What the hell are you doing?" The man continued to challenge, "Do you even know who he is? Step back. This is a police matter, not your business." Jankos's voice was cold and devoid of any emotion, as if he were completely indifferent to what was happening around him. His arrogance and self-satisfaction only heightened the tension. Jankos shoved Tom hard against the car door before opening it, each of his actions radiating brutality and authority. The officer's breath was rapid, as if the tension in the air compressed all emotions into a single moment. However, Tom did not resist. He knew he didn't need to prove anything. He was merely a victim. Another patrol car pulled up, its siren blaring for a moment before falling silent. The car door swung open, and Officer Jennifer stepped out. She was about 35 years old, exuding calmness and rationality, a dedicated officer who took her duties seriously. Her gaze swept over the scene, quickly grasping the situation. Jennifer approached, observing Tom and Jankos, sensing the tension between them. It didn't take her long to understand that something was amiss in this situation. With a professional demeanor, Jennifer asked Jankos, "What's going on here?" Jankos looked at Jennifer with annoyance, his expression showing irritation. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone questioning and disrespectful. "This is my case. I'm handling this situation." Jennifer didn't let Jankos' attitude overpower her. She maintained a calm tone, refusing to let emotions sway her. "I have the right to be here. I need to understand the situation and ensure that everything is following protocol," she replied, her gaze steady as she looked directly at Jankos. Jennifer's presence created a new tension in the air. as if a ray of light had just pierced through the dark clouds. Tom sensed her underlying support, and within him flickered a glimmer of hope that the truth would eventually come to light. Jennifer glanced at the gathering crowd before turning back to Jankos, her voice both professional and tinged with urgency. "What's happening here?" she reiterated. "There's a situation here," Jankos said, his tone rigid as he tried to maintain control. "I stopped this driver, and he's not cooperating, so I arrested him for resisting." Jennifer raised an eyebrow, not fully convinced by Jankos' explanation. "Resisting, really?" she asked, her voice maintaining professionalism but revealing a clear sense of urgency. Jankos felt the pressure from the crowd's gaze and Jennifer's sharp questioning. "I don't need evidence," he retorted. "I decided this is a suspicious situation, and it needs to be checked." Jennifer frowned, her eyes glancing over Tom, before something clicked in her mind. She recognized his face. Her mind flashed back to news reports and articles. "Lieutenant Tom Harrison?" she asked, her tone gentle but filled with recognition. "Is that you?" "Lieutenant," Jankos mumbled, his tone now laced with disbelief. The self-satisfaction and arrogance he had tried to maintain began to dissipate, replaced by anxiety, as he realized the person before him was not an ordinary individual. He felt as if he had been undermined, his gaze beginning to waver, the certainty in his voice faltering. "So what? Does that mean he can't be a criminal?" Jankos asked, but the contempt in his voice was no longer sharp. The crowd began to murmur louder, the whispers escalating into shouts that echoed their outrage at Jankos' actions. "Let him go!" one person yelled. "You have no right to do this!" another cried out, creating an atmosphere thick with tension and support for Tom. Jennifer stood firm, maintaining her stance amid the rising tide of dissent. She recognized that her presence was not only necessary to protect Tom, but also to ensure that Jankos could not further abuse his power. Jankos' expression turned anxious as he realized he was not only facing a serviceman, but also a community ready to stand up for justice. Tom remained silent, though a storm of anger simmered within. He could feel the crowd's gaze focused on him, clearly hearing the whispers around him, but he was determined not to let himself be swept away by the rising anger threatening to spiral out of control. He had faced greater challenges than this. He had navigated war zones, witnessed comrades fall, and carried the burden of command. But this time, it was an entirely different battle, one he had not anticipated but knew he must confront with all his resolve and dignity. Jennifer quickly pulled out her phone and called the chief of police, fully aware that this situation was complicated and beyond her authority. The crowd around them grew larger, many people stopping, their faces filled with concern, phones raised to capture every moment. Officer Jankos stood silently, a hint of confusion crossing his face as he realized the seriousness of the situation. Although Tom's hands were still cuffed behind his back, he stood tall, exuding calmness and dignity, a stark contrast to the humiliation he was enduring. He was not just a victim of discrimination. He was a man who had served his country, and his resilience shone through the hardships he faced. Inside, the hurt and anger smoldered like a fire that could not be extinguished. Tom understood that this was not just his story. It was a voice for millions of other black individuals who had suffered injustice and discrimination. He bore the responsibility not only to protect himself, but also to stand up for all those who had faced similar situations. His mind was filled with determination, and in this moment, he knew that his strength could inspire others. Officer Jennifer quickly stepped forward, her face etched with concern. She had called for help and requested the chief of police to come immediately to assess the situation. But in her heart, she understood that this would not be enough, given the seriousness of the escalation. She moved towards Tom, her hands quickly reaching to remove the cuffs from his wrists. "I'm sorry, Colonel Taylor," she said gently, her voice carrying a regret that Jankos had never shown. This was all just a misunderstanding. However, Tom shook his head, refusing her assistance. "You don't even know if it's a misunderstanding," he replied, his tone calm but resolute. "Get the evidence from the video that the bystanders recorded and from my car's dash cam. They will reveal the truth." Jennifer paused, realizing that Tom was right. Simply removing the cuffs would not resolve the larger issue at hand. "That really is Colonel Tom, isn't it?" a woman in the crowd shouted, her voice filled with disbelief and emotion. "The one who appeared on television, who fought for this country, "Yes, that's him," another man replied, raising his phone high, trying to capture every moment. Tom, with his hands cuffed behind him, stood facing the two younger officers, his eyes fierce and piercing. His expression seemed calm, but the intensity hidden behind each feature made both officers shudder, feeling the weight of the unfolding situation. The air between them was thick, as if time had come to a standstill. All eyes in the crowd focused on them. The murmurs from the crowd echoed, occasionally interrupted by shouts of anger or the flashes of cameras from those recording the scene. "I don't care if I'm a serviceman," Tom spoke in a deep voice, but his powerful tone silenced the crowd instantly. "Whether I'm a general or not doesn't matter. You see a black man and immediately regard me as a threat. Is that how the police operate?" These words hit like bullets, piercing through Jankos's wall of arrogance. Tom stood there, hands cuffed behind his back, facing the two young officers, his eyes ablaze, sharp and unwavering. His demeanor appeared calm, but the determination lurking behind his features made both officers shudder, acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. The atmosphere between them was stifling, as if time had frozen, with all eyes in the crowd directed toward them. The murmurs of the crowd echoed, occasionally interrupted by shouts of anger or the flashing lights from the cameras of those recording the event. "I don't care if I'm a serviceman," Tom spoke again in a deep tone, his powerful voice causing the crowd to fall silent. "Whether I'm a general or not doesn't matter. You see a black man and immediately regard me as a threat. Just that is enough for you to justify your actions." These words struck like bullets, piercing through Jankos's wall of arrogance. Janko swallowed hard, his face flushed with embarrassment, a heavy cloak of shame enveloping him. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The silence stretched like a slap, and Jankos understood that nothing could repair this situation. "You don't know anything about me, but I'm going to tell you one thing," Tom continued, his voice steady but every word packed with power. "I have dedicated my entire life to serving this country. I have led soldiers into battle, made decisions affecting lives, and worked tirelessly to protect the freedom that people like you enjoy every day. And this is how I am treated. This is the thanks I receive." In the quiet air, a shout erupted from the crowd. "This is what we're talking about." The tension in the atmosphere was palpable. Jennifer, witnessing the situation, realized they were on the brink of a potentially violent outbreak at any moment. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her shoulders. "I understand you're angry, and you have every right to be," she spoke, striving to keep her voice calm. "But please let us handle this." Jennifer spoke with a gentle yet firm tone, bowing her head for a moment before looking up at him, her eyes sparkling with determination. "And I will ensure that this is handled properly." Another police car arrived, the sound of its tires rolling on the pavement breaking the tense atmosphere. This time, the chief of police had come to the scene. Sergeant Thomas, an older man with graying hair and a serious expression, stepped out of the car. His demeanor radiated experience, a testament to many years of service in the force. As soon as his feet hit the ground, Thomas's eyes scanned the scene sharply, assessing the situation. He recognized the complexity of the events unfolding as he saw the gathered crowd, the flashing lights, and the anxiety evident on Jennifer's and Tom's faces. Jennifer quickly approached, fully aware of the need to convey accurate and timely information. "Sergeant," she began, her voice reflecting determination and concern, "there's a serious situation occurring. Officer Janko stopped Colonel Taylor's vehicle without clear justification. He has been handcuffed and is facing racial discrimination. The crowd is growing increasingly angry, and many of them are recording and showing support for Colonel Tom. I fear that if we don't act soon, this situation could escalate into violence." The crowd around them grew louder, their shouts becoming more urgent, creating a simmering atmosphere filled with tension. This was no longer just a personal incident. This moment had become a symbol of everything that had led to this injustice. Every discrimination, every protest, every life lost. Sergeant Thomas turned to face the crowd, raising his hand in a pleading gesture. "Everyone, please," he called out, his voice strong and steady. "We will handle this. I ask you to remain calm and let us do our jobs." But the crowd was no longer interested in empty promises. They had seen enough and heard too many insincere calls for calm. Their voices rose like a wave, a collective demand for accountability that could not be ignored. Tom stood firm at the center of it all, his gaze sweeping over faces filled with anger, disappointment, and pain. He knew this moment was not just about him, but about all those who had suffered injustice. Things cannot just be another investigation, Tom stated calmly but firmly. People need to see real change, not just empty promises. Sergeant Thomas nodded slowly, his expression growing more serious. You're right, and I will ensure this doesn't get overlooked. As Thomas spoke, Officer Janko stood behind him, his face pale and his body trembling. He knew the gravity of what was about to unfold and the public repercussions he was about to face. The accusatory gazes from the crowd felt like sharp knives, making him realize there was no turning back. Then, they all got into the police car and headed to the precinct, the tension still lingering in the air. Tom sat in the back seat, still cuffed, but his feelings had changed. He knew this was not just a simple journey to the police station. It was an opportunity for everyone to witness and acknowledge the truth. Sergeant Thomas sat beside him, his eyes reflecting determination and responsibility. I will ensure that all statements are accurately recorded, he said, his tone serious. We will follow the proper procedures. Jennifer sat in the front seat, occasionally turning to look at Tom, wanting to convey support and empathy. She understood that this was not just an investigation. It was the first step toward justice, not just for Tom, but for all those who had experienced injustice. As the car rolled forward, the streetlights flashed by the window, but in Tom's mind, everything felt like a slow-motion film. He thought about all that had happened, the looks from the crowd, the feeling of support he had received. This was not just about him. It was about others, those who had been overlooked, those who needed a voice. As the car drove toward the police station, Sergeant Thomas announced, "Your vehicle will be brought along with us to gather evidence from the dash cam. This is crucial to clarifying the situation." Tom nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination within. He knew that the evidence from the dash cam would reinforce his words and prove the truth. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm yet powerful. "I want everything to be made clear." When the car arrived at the police station, Jack Holland, the police chief, was waiting with a serious and responsible demeanor. Sergeant Thomas opened the car door and extended his hand to help Tom out, even though his hands were still cuffed. Chief Holland approached, his eyes scanning Tom with seriousness, as if assessing every detail of the situation. "I apologize for what has happened," he said, his tone filled with both respect and seriousness. "We will do everything we can to clarify this matter." Jennifer stepped out behind him, quickly standing next to Tom. "Chief, we need to review the evidence from his vehicle's camera. This will be very important in determining the truth," she said, her voice full of determination. Chief Holland nodded, looking directly into Tom's eyes with sincerity. "We will check it immediately. I want to ensure that everything is handled fairly and transparently." Tom felt a small sense of relief at these words. Although he still carried anger and hurt within, the support from officers like Thomas and Jennifer gave him a new glimmer of hope. He knew this was a time to fight, not just for himself, but for all those who had suffered injustice. "Thank you," Tom said, his voice strong and resolute. "I just want the truth to be revealed. I don't want this to happen to anyone else." As the investigation commenced, the video recorded by bystanders quickly spread across social media. Within hours, images of a former soldier being handcuffed in front of a crowd caught the attention of millions. The footage, showing the tension and injustice of the situation, touched many hearts, compelling them to speak out. The headlines of the videos on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram became prominent. "Former general arrested for his skin color." Many users began sharing the video, not only with outraged comments, but also with questions about justice and accountability from law enforcement. In no time, the video garnered millions of views and shares, becoming a viral sensation. Simultaneously, related hashtags began to emerge, such as #Justice for Tom, #PoliceBrutality, and #EndRacial Profiling, spreading across social media. Lively discussions unfolded everywhere, from online forums to protests in major cities. The crowd had not just stopped at watching the video, they had turned their outrage into action, calling for a revolution in how law enforcement conducted their duties. Activists and human rights organizations quickly joined the fray, demanding justice for Tom and others who had experienced similar discrimination. They planned protests, calling for transparency in the investigation process and accountability from authorities. The video of the arrest was not just a simple recording, it had become a symbol of the ongoing injustices in society. Through social media channels, many began sharing their own stories of racial discrimination, creating a wave of empathy and support for Tom. His image, a former soldier, became an emblem of the fight against deep-seated prejudices and the abuse of power. Media outlets quickly reported on the incident, bringing it to the forefront of national news. Major networks, from CNN to NBC, ran special reports, analyzing the situation and Tom's life. They interviewed human rights experts who affirmed that this incident was not just an isolated case, but part of a larger issue: racism in law enforcement. Tom's story was told with vivid details, from his military service to his life after leaving the armed forces. Journalists began to delve into previous investigations involving Officer Jankos and how the police handled similar cases, creating a clearer picture of the issues that existed within the system. Public reaction was also extremely strong. Many people organized rallies in support of Tom in various cities, carrying banners with slogans like "Justice for Tom" and "Stop Abuse of Power." Photos and videos from these protests quickly spread on social media, further energizing the movement. Meanwhile, politicians began to take notice of the incident. Numerous lawmakers and officials criticized Officer Jankos' actions and called for reforms in the police force to ensure that incidents like this do not happen again. They emphasized the need for a fair and comprehensive investigation, not only to protect Tom's rights, but also to restore the community's trust in law enforcement. The viral spread of the video and the strong reactions from the media and the public created a significant wave, not only for Tom personally, but for society as a whole. It sounded an alarm about the state of racism and abuse of power, while also prompting discussions about the need for change in how law enforcement interacts with their communities. In light of this situation, Police Chief Jack Holland decided to initiate a public investigation to clarify the matter. He recognized that the community's trust in the police was at stake, and handling this situation transparently was essential. The investigation was established with a team of independent investigators, including external experts, to ensure objectivity. They began gathering evidence from the video, witness reports from those present at the scene, and testimonies from the involved officers, including Jankos. Throughout the investigation process, the community continued to closely monitor the developments. Protests occurred frequently, with many demanding justice for Tom and accountability from the police. Human rights organizations also voiced their support, calling for a thorough and transparent investigation. Under pressure from the public, information about the investigation was quickly updated across media outlets. Everyone paid attention to every detail, from the police chief's press conference to reports from the investigators. Investigators concluded that Jankos had acted improperly, violating police procedures and taking unacceptable actions against a citizen, especially a veteran like Tom. They pointed out that racism and abuse of power had led to this incident, and such behavior could not be forgiven. Faced with immense pressure from the community and strong opposition from human rights organizations, Chief Holland announced that Jankos would be terminated without pay. This decision not only reflected personal accountability, but also sent a strong message that the police would not tolerate abuse of power and racism. After Tom's case came to light and Jankos was fired without pay, his life quickly spiraled into chaos. The termination from above was not merely a job loss, it was a heavy shock that completely upended everything he had known. As news of his firing spread, Jankos felt like a shadow in his own home. Each day he faced critical gazes from neighbors and even former friends. For the first time in years, Jankos felt as though he was no longer a part of the community he had once proudly served. Conversations that had previously been easy now felt awkward and foreign. When he went outside, he often caught scrutinizing glances and heard whispers behind his back, intensifying his feelings of loneliness and shame. Phrases like "that cop" or "the racist cop" became labels he could not escape. The pressure came not only from outside, but also from his family. His wife, who had always supported his career, now began to feel anxious. They faced fears about their finances, their future, and their family's tarnished reputation. Arguments arose, and doubts about their future only added to Jankos' stress. At night, Jankos often lay awake, burdened with thoughts. The image of Tom being handcuffed in front of the crowd haunted him. He could not forget the look of disappointment and hurt in that man's eyes. Part of him wanted to go back and apologize, but he knew that words could not change the truth. This realization only deepened his sense of guilt. After the incident, Tom returned to his family life. As everything began to settle down, he felt a slow return of peace to his life. Despite enduring a long period of stress and pressure, being back with his family provided the comfort he needed. Sarah, his wife, always waited for him with a worried but loving gaze. She had followed every development of the incident, feeling the pain and injustice her husband had endured. When Tom walked into the house, she rushed to hug him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was so worried," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "But I knew you would get through this." Tom merely smiled, feeling the warmth of his wife's embrace. He didn't need to say much. Her presence spoke volumes. Long evening conversations, shared meals with the kids, and peaceful moments with his family helped Tom regain his spirit. Although the events still lingered in his mind, the love and support from his family gradually restored his sense of tranquility. When asked about the incident, Tom simply shook his head, his eyes burning with determination. "My story isn't just about me. It's about others who have also endured discrimination and injustice. I don't want to be a name in a headline." He emphasized that the media attention was not something he desired. While he understood that his case had garnered widespread attention, Tom was uncomfortable with the idea of becoming the focal point of a larger debate about rights and justice. "That's not why I spoke out," he added, his tone stronger. "I don't want any compensation. I just want fairness." Tom understood that money could not heal the wounds he and others had suffered. He only hoped that through his story, others would become aware of the injustices that exist and could help change the system. "I hope that what happened to me will encourage others to stand up and demand change," he said, his eyes filled with hope. In his mind, the pursuit of justice was not for himself, but for those who had no voice, those who could not stand up out of fear. He wanted to use his story as a tool to raise awareness and make a difference in the community. "That's what really matters," he concluded, emphasizing that he would continue to fight for the values he believed in, despite any challenges. With support from his family and community, Tom began to actively engage in social work to combat racism and abuse of power. He attended community meetings where people gathered to discuss social and political issues. Here, Tom shared his story, offering a genuine and profound perspective on his experiences. He did not shy away from expressing his emotions, from the pain and hurt to the resilience and determination he had gained through adversity. In addition to speaking at meetings, Tom also began connecting with human rights organizations and social activist groups. He participated in educational programs where he could talk to youth and the community about the importance of awareness regarding racism. Tom realized that many people still did not fully understand the impacts of racism in society, and he wanted to help them recognize that everyone deserves equal opportunity. To spread his message, Tom started a blog where he shared his thoughts and feelings about social issues, while providing information about events and activities he participated in. His writings became a source of inspiration for many, encouraging them to engage in social work for justice. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who decided not to accept injustice," he wrote in one blog post, reflecting his humble spirit and determination. Tom also participated in workshops and training sessions on cultural sensitivity, where he could learn more and exchange ideas with like-minded individuals. He found that connecting with others who had also suffered from racism helped create a strong support network. These meetings were not only an opportunity for him to share his story, but also a place to hear the stories of others, fostering deep connections within the community. Tom's active involvement in social work allowed him to feel the power of the community. He saw that when people stood together and collaborated, they could create positive change. This further fueled his determination to fight for justice and against racism, not just for himself, but for all who had endured similar injustices. Tom understood that this struggle was not merely a personal battle, it was a journey for the entire community. He felt as though he had found a new purpose in life after retiring early. The time and experiences in the military had instilled in him a resilient spirit and a sense of responsibility toward the community. His years of service not only provided him with skills and confidence, but also taught him the value of sacrifice and compassion. The process of transitioning from military to civilian life might have been challenging, but now he recognized that he could apply those valuable lessons to a new life. His departure from the military was not an end, but a shift into another realm where he could continue to serve by helping the community. One day, as Tom was on his way home after a day of work at the community center, he accidentally spotted the silhouette of a man standing by the roadside. The evening sun cast a long shadow on the ground. Tom was familiar with these simple moments, time to himself to reflect on what had happened in his life. But as he approached, the familiarity of that figure made his heart race. It was Jankos. Tom stopped. The man who had once cuffed him and thrown him into a battle he never wished for now stood before him. The golden sunlight illuminated Jankos' face, highlighting the tense features and the look of deep thought. Tom couldn't forget what had happened, but he also knew that this opportunity could be a pivotal moment for both of them. Jankos, seemingly unaware of Tom's presence, stood silently. For a moment, Tom felt a conflict within him. He had often thought about encountering Jankos again, and now that moment had arrived. Tom decided to approach. "Jankos!" he called, his voice hesitant. "The last time we met, things didn't go well," Jankos said, looking down, his eyes reflecting regret. I truly apologize for what happened." Tom felt a sense of calm wash over him as he heard these words. He had imagined this meeting, but now the reality was much more complex. "I understand," he said, trying to hold back his emotions. "But please understand that what happened affected not only me, it affected my family and the community as well." Jankos nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I know. I didn't grasp the consequences of my actions back then. I let my biases and fears dictate my decision. I'm very sorry for that." He sighed, as if all the pent-up torment had finally been released. "Why not come inside for a cup of tea? We can talk more," Tom suggested, his tone warm and friendly. Jankos seemed surprised but immediately nodded, a faint smile spreading across his face. "Thank you, I'd be glad to." They both walked toward Tom's home, where everyday life and family memories were always abundant. When they reached the door, Tom opened it and led Jankos inside, feeling the tension in the air gradually dissipate. "Please have a seat," Tom said as they entered the living room. The comfortable sofa and cozy atmosphere of the house made both men feel more at ease. Tom went into the kitchen, where the aroma of tea wafted through the air. He prepared a teapot and poured in the boiling water, while Jankos sat at the table, looking around and soaking in the family ambiance. Tom returned with 2 cups of tea, handing one to Jankos before sitting down across from him. "I often brew tea like this in the afternoon. It helps me relax and reflect on what's happened," he said, taking a sip of hot tea. "I hope it helps you feel comfortable too." Jankos smiled and took a sip of tea. "It's delicious. I haven't enjoyed such peaceful moments in a long time." In the quiet atmosphere, they began to share about their lives. Tom spoke about what had happened after he left the police force, the community activities he was involved in, and how his family had supported him in this new journey. Jankos listened intently, and when Tom finished, he felt the need to share more about himself. "I've had a tough time since the incident. I lost my job, lost friends, and faced a lot of criticism. But I also realized that I need to change," Jankos admitted, his eyes heavy with emotion. "I let my biases dictate my actions, and that harmed not only others, but also myself." Tom nodded, understanding what Jankos was feeling. Change is never easy, but recognizing mistakes is a crucial first step. We can all learn from our experiences. "I want to make amends for what I did," Jankos said, his gaze resolute, reflecting sincerity and determination in his voice. Though simple, his words carried a heavy weight of remorse and responsibility. "I will participate in educational programs and social activities. I want to help others and ensure that no one has to go through what you endured." Tom looked into Jankos' eyes and saw the transformation in him. He was no longer the arrogant officer he had once been. Now, the man before him was seeking to atone for past mistakes. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" Tom asked, wanting to confirm Jankos' determination. "Yes," Jankos affirmed, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "I've joined meetings of support groups for officers dealing with similar issues. I've heard the stories, and I feel responsible to do something." In that moment, Jankos shared more about his plans. "I'm connecting with a local human rights organization. They have educational programs to raise awareness about racism within the community and the police force. I want to be a part of that." He emphasized each word, as if trying to convey his commitment. Tom sensed the sincerity in Jankos' words. His actions were not only an effort to atone, but also a larger mission. "Getting involved in educational programs is a good way," Tom said, expressing his support. "But you also need to take concrete action. You can work with youth in the community, helping them understand discrimination and how they can stand up for justice." "Absolutely," Jankos nodded, his eyes lighting up with new ideas. "I'm also thinking about organizing workshops where I can share my story and the lessons I've learned. I want to show people that they are not alone and that change is possible." Tom felt a wave of emotion rising. Despite the many wounds still in his heart, seeing Jankos willing to change gave him hope. "If you truly want to do this, I will help you. We can organize workshops together and come up with practical activities. I know many organizations are looking for people willing to share their experiences," Tom said, a smile slowly spreading across his face. Jankos felt his heart warm at Tom's support. "Thank you. I really appreciate it," he replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "I know this won't be easy, but if I can make someone understand that they don't have to endure injustice, then I will feel like I've done something meaningful." Tom nodded, feeling a special connection between them. The important thing is that we not only talk, but also take action. People need to see change, and that change starts with us. After a long and emotional conversation, Jankos felt lighter as he prepared to leave Tom's house. He stood up, a smile on his face and a look of hope in his eyes. "Thank you for listening and sharing. I really needed this," he said, his gaze sincere. Tom stood up as well, looking out the window. "Thank you for coming here. I'm glad to have had the chance to talk with you. Honestly, this has helped me a lot." He paused for a moment, then added, "I know that together we're building something better." As Jankos was about to leave, Tom remembered something important. "Tomorrow, I have a talk at my son's school. We'll be discussing racism and how students can stand up for justice," he said, a spark of hope shining in his eyes. "I would really like you to join me." Jankos hesitated, feeling both nervous and excited. "Me? I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak to the students," he replied cautiously. "I haven't really done anything good in the past." "That's exactly why you should participate," Tom emphasized. "We need authentic voices from those who have lived the reality. You can share your story, the lessons you've learned from your mistakes. That will carry a lot of weight." Jankos pondered this invitation for a moment. "I'm not sure I'll do it right, but I'll try," he said, filled with apprehension. "If I can help someone, then I'm more than willing to participate." Tom smiled, feeling pleased with Jankos' decision. "That's the spirit. Think of it as an opportunity to help the kids and to learn for yourself." He relaxed, feeling lighter at the prospect of inviting Jankos to be part of something positive. Jankos nodded, feeling more excited than ever. "I'll come. Thank you for this opportunity," he said, a smile on his face. "I really want to do something meaningful." They exchanged a warm handshake before Jankos left. On his way home, he felt like a new chapter in his life had begun. The guilt and regret he had carried for so long were gradually being replaced by hope and determination. Tom had opened a door for him, and now Jankos could feel the light ahead. That evening, Tom sat down with his family, sharing with his wife and children about his meeting with Jankos. "Things are gradually changing," he said, his eyes shining bright. "I believe Jankos is on the path to finding himself again." Sarah nodded, understanding the importance of Jankos participating in the school talk. "That will be a great opportunity for him," she said, feeling proud of what Tom was doing. Not just for Jankos, but for those students. They will see that everyone can change. Tom smiled, his heart filled with hope for the future. He knew that the road ahead was still long, but at least he had a companion to walk with. The next morning, he eagerly awaited the talk, confident that this would be an important step in the fight against injustice and racism in the community. The story of Tom and Yankos is a powerful call for all of us to stand up for justice together. They have endured painful challenges, but from those experiences, they have found the strength to become voices for those who do not have the opportunity to speak up. This shows that when individuals dare to act, we can create a strong wave of change. Change can only occur when we unite and act together. Each of us plays an important role in this fight. Don't think that your small efforts won't have an impact. It is those seemingly simple actions, like participating in community activities or speaking up to protect the rights of others, that can make a huge difference. When we come together, no barrier can stop us. Remember that hope for the future lies not just in words, but also in our actions. Let the story of Tom and Yankos be the spark that ignites the hearts of everyone. They have proven that resilience and determination can help us overcome any challenge. A bright future awaits us, but only if we bravely stand up, cooperate, and relentlessly strive for a fairer world. Together, we can build a society where respect and justice are practiced every day. A world where everyone deserves a voice and is treated fairly, regardless of skin color, gender, or status. Let us take action together. Let us be the pioneers of change. Hope is not just a dream. It is a reality we can create if we unite and move forward together. How did this story resonate with you? In what ways have you or your community experienced prejudice and injustice? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely want to hear from you. If this message struck a chord with you, please give it a like. Share this video to spread awareness, and remember to subscribe to our channel so you can stay updated on more meaningful stories and messages. Together, we can work towards building a fairer and more equitable society. Wishing you a wonderful day ahead.